My name is Casey Clark, and I'm a graduate student at Moss Landing Marine Laboratories, just up the road here from Monterey. And I'm studying humpback whales off the coast of California. I've been interested in marine biology for much of my life. I'm originally from Washington State, but I moved down to the Monterey Bay area in 2004 to get my undergraduate at University of California, Santa Cruz. And fell in love with the area as soon as I came here. I've been here ever since. It's been about 7 or almost 8 years now. And just a really, really beautiful part of the world, and also somewhere that's just an amazing hotspot for marine biology and studying the sort of things I like to study. Monterey Bay and the entire area around here its history has been really very intertwined with the history of whales. It's for hundreds of years now. Actually, in the mid-1800s, there was a large whaling industry off the coast here, but it was largely the sort of the old-fashioned version of whaling, where the men would go out in the small wooden ships. It was all hand-powered. They would row the boats or sail the boats. And then in the early 1900s, about 1919, actually up in Moss Landing, where I go to school now, they built the very first modern whaling station in this area. And this industry was one of the big focal points for the economy in this area back in that time. And it remains inextricably tied. These animals, the whales on the bay out here, remain inextricably tied to our economy. There are something like 6 or 9 whale watching companies in this area that go out and continue to provide people with wonderful viewing experiences out on the bay. We have lots of different types of whales here in the bay. Probably our 2 star attractions are the humpback whales, which are here mostly in summer and mid-fall. This is a great time to go out and see them right now in September. And the gray whales. There's about 20,000 of them that pass our coast twice a year. They head from Baja California in Mexico, where they actually breed in the protected lagoons there, have their calves, and then they swim past our coast and all the way up to the Bering Sea and Kamchatka off of Russia and off of Alaska every winter. It's an incredibly long migration. They follow the coastline the whole way. And we get the treat of seeing these animals as they come by each year. They're very, very coastal animals. They rarely go in very deep waters over a few hundred feet. So they like to stick really near to shore, which makes for great viewing experiences for us. The Monterey Bay has a very deep and incredibly large submarine canyon, which is bigger than the Grand Canyon, and it's out there hidden underneath the waters. And that's actually the deepest waters these animals face. So gray whales have difficulties with deep water. They spend almost their entire lives very, very close to the shore, very coastally. In fact, we think they actually navigate in part by listening to the waves crashing against the shore. So they spend their entire life near shore. They actually feed on the bottom, unlike many whales, which just feed in the open water. So they need to be close enough to shore that they can dive down to the bottom, open their mouth, scoop up a mouthful of mud, and eat what's in it. And so these animals, like I said, spend their entire lives very, very close to the shore and in very shallow water. So when they come to the Monterey Bay and they come to the submarine canyon, which is incredibly deep and there's not really much of a way around it, they cut across the mouth of the bay, and it sends them over thousands of feet of water. They're far away from the crashing of the waves. They're far away from most of their reference points, really. That's how they usually get their bearings, is knowing that there is a bottom under them and a shore somewhat nearby. So when they cross the mouth of the bay, it opens them up. It makes them a little uneasy. I can't say that the animals are uneasy, but they'll sort of mill on one side of the canyon before they cross. They'll wait a couple days, and they'll seem to swim across as fast as they can. It also means that we get the opportunity to see some other very interesting and beautiful marine mammals, which are the orcas, the killer whales. They come to this area actually to try to hunt the gray whale calves. And so when these mother gray whales are coming up north with their calves and they cross this marine canyon, it makes a very good place for the killer whales to sort of try and attack. So it's a little bit sinister, and it certainly, some people don't like to see the actual act of it, but it's nature and how things go, and it's an amazing sight to see these killer whales actually hunting these gray whale calves. Generally here in winter and early spring, sort of the gray whales head on their way south from their feeding areas up off of Alaska, and they actually make it into our area around late December, early January. You'll start to see the first of them trickling down, and they'll just be a steady stream of them off our coast until around late February, early March, comes after February, late February, early March. These animals will then sort of, the main flow sort of turns around and they're actually headed back north. And they'll keep doing that all the way until May. So basically from January through May, you can see these large whales off our coast. They're about 35, 40, 45 feet long. They're a mottled gray. They're pretty slow moving, pretty docile, very neat to take a look at though. You can see them oftentimes just standing on the beach. You can see the puff of their spout or their blow as they breathe, and also you can see their backs. The other whale that we see here very often, and that's actually throughout most of the rest of the year, which is mainly a summer attraction, is the humpback whale. And it's considered kind of a crowd pleaser for the whale watching boats. They're often very, very aerial and acrobatic. They're the ones that you'll see often doing the really, really high breaches. They'll jump, their full body will come out of the water, and they'll slam down with an incredibly large splash. These animals will weigh 20 tons or more. They'll be 50 feet long, really, really incredibly large animals that you can't really appreciate until you really see them in real life, how big one of these animals is, just throwing its whole body up out of the water and just coming down with an amazing crash. They'll take their whole tail out of the water and slam it down, creating another big splash. They'll take their really long sort of flippers, their pectoral fins, and just slap them down on the water, also creating these big splashes, mainly for fun, really, is what biologists think. There certainly are a lot of other theories as to what exactly these animals are doing. Maybe they're trying to remove parasites. Maybe there's some sort of communication, especially with the tail slapping and the fin slapping. It makes a really loud noise that can be heard for miles, and underwater the sound travels very well. So there's certainly maybe some other functions to it, but when you see these animals, it really often looks like they're just being exuberant and playing. And so I think there certainly is an aspect of that in their behavior as well. So they provide a really great attraction for visitors to this area to come out and see. And they arrive in this area around late April. You'll start to get a few coming in. They're coming actually from the south. These animals breed off of Mexico and Central America in the winters. And so they're sort of on the opposite schedule of the gray whales, at least in our region. So just as the gray whales are starting to trickle out, you'll start to see the influx of humpback whales coming in. And they'll stick around feeding in our area off of our coast here until mid-September, on into October. Sometimes they'll stick around into November, and then most of them will leave and actually head back down to their breeding areas where they'll spend the rest of the year. But there are still a few that sort of hang around off our coast. So if you're lucky, you can see them just about any time of the year. And these whales aren't the only animals that you can actually see off our coast and in the Monterey Bay area. There are lots and lots of marine mammals. This big submarine canyon provides a lot of deep water, which actually wells up to the surface. It comes up to the surface bringing a lot of nutrients. Those nutrients allow the plankton to bloom in huge numbers, which causes a lot of food to be available to small fish. It works its way on up the food chain, and what we end up with is a really incredibly rich ecosystem out there, with the marine mammals largely at the top of it. So these large whales are drawn here to feed. We also have many different species of dolphins and porpoises out in the bay. You have Rizzo's dolphins, which I've seen in groups of 2,000 or 3,000, 4,000 of these animals. They're about 14 feet long. They're sort of a light gray, and they'll spend a lot of time jumping out of the water, breaching, very acrobatic, visually pleasing animals. They have a very tall dorsal fin. Nice animals. They also are often accompanied by an animal called the northern right whale dolphin. And it's a really, really interesting animal, very long, very skinny, and it actually, unlike most dolphins, you may normally think of flipper, a bottlenose dolphin, and see that sort of classic, the smile, the built-in smile, the sort of pointed nose, and the big dorsal fin. Well, these animals have no dorsal fin at all, and so when you see them, it's actually a little strange when you see them for the first time, because they almost just look like a long, sleek torpedo, and they're absolutely beautiful. They're sort of a dusky black with a nice, clear, bright white along their sides, and sort of a streak, almost a racing stripe down their sides. And they travel at incredible speeds, and they'll just swim through the ocean, and they also spend a lot of time jumping or breaching out of the water, and those are ones. And like I said, I've seen groups of these Rizzo's dolphins out there numbering in the thousands. Well, oftentimes when you see that, then there's these other ones, these northern right whale dolphins with them, not quite as many, but hundreds up to maybe 1,000, just filling the ocean with splashes and these shining bodies as they're jumping around. And that obviously means there's a lot for them here in terms of food. Those big aggregations of dolphins often mean that there's a lot of fish underneath. And so they'll draw other marine mammals as well, that you'll get lots of sea lions, seals, you'll get porpoises, and sometimes these large whales will be intermixed in sort of just this giant aggregation of marine mammals, which can be incredible to behold and really a lucky thing to see if you're out there at the right time. For my entire life, I've really been interested in sort of the outdoors, interested in the natural world. I grew up in Bellingham, Washington, and spent a lot of time around the water of Puget Sound. And so my interest in the ocean was sort of sparked at a young age. So when I moved to this area, I knew that I wanted to be involved in marine biology. That's what I wanted to study, and this is certainly an incredible hotspot for it. I didn't really realize that it's a very, very different system where I grew up. Puget Sound is a very different place than the Monterey Bay. I never really realized until I came here what an incredible, rich, diverse place this canyon and this community, this bay actually are for marine animals. There's an incredible abundance and diversity of life here. The Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute, which is in Moss Landing, right near my school where I go to school, they do deep sea exploration down in the canyon, thousands and thousands of feet below the surface, and they just about every month, every day it seems like, are finding a new species down there that we've never even dreamed existed until they send their cameras down there. We're not quite as much on the forefront in terms of discovering new species working with marine mammals because they've largely been studied and cataloged for many years, but what always amazes me every single day is that just about every question that I am able to answer through my research about these animals, it opens the door to 10, 15 more. We really don't know the half, and that's an exaggeration. We don't know a tenth, a hundredth of what's going on in our oceans. And so it's a constant inspiration to me to be out there to try to answer these questions, even with an animal like the humpback whale, which is what I study for my thesis, one of the most studied large whales in the world. There are so many things we don't know about their life cycle. The blue whale, the largest animal ever to have lived on this planet, which is also a seasonal visitor to the bay out here, we don't even know where they breed. And so that's amazing to me that there can be an animal that is the largest animal ever to have lived, bigger than any dinosaur, bigger than any of those giant sharks that used to swim around the oceans. And we don't even know where they go to have their babies. And so I find that very exciting, very interesting. I think that there's so much more to learn in the oceans, and that this area, the Monterey Bay area, is certainly an incredible spot to be studying these amazing marine animals. So I'm very happy to be at the Museum of Monterey here speaking, especially concurrent with their show Flows to Bay, which is exhibiting marine debris, plastics, which have been recovered floating from oceans and on the beaches, and they've actually turned these into beautiful works of art to raise awareness about the negative impacts that humans have on the oceans in hopes that we can actually reduce these and work for healthier oceans and healthier ecosystems and a more beautiful Monterey.